Today on NBA 2K24, I'll be going over 10 players who you need to trade for within your MyNBA franchises. These 10 players I have selected are backed up by science. I have done a 5-year simulation to go through the numbers and determine the 10 players who I think would make a lot of sense for you to trade for. Now, these 10 players are not necessarily superstars. Luka, Giannis, guys like that are not on the list. These are more of bang for your buck type of guys. Players who you're going to get more production out of than what you'll be trading away. The first player on the list is DeAndre Ayton with the Phoenix Suns. Ayton is only 25 years old and he's a pretty skilled big man. He can score at a high level outside of the three-point line. He's a pretty solid defender and rebounder as well, and he's an improving jump shooter from beyond the arc. The one issue with him is that he is on a pretty big contract, but if that does not scare you off, you can trade for him without having to give up too much of value. In this trade, all we have to give up is Malachi Branham and Zach Collins, and we can get DeAndre Ayton and Yuta Watanabe, who's a pretty good role player. During the 5-year simulation I did, Ayton was pretty solid. He went as high as the mid to high 80s, around 86, 87 overall. His three-point shot's gone up a little bit. His other attributes have stayed really high. And he had some very good seasons, including an all-star appearance in 2024-2025 with the Phoenix Suns. Efficiency looks good. Obviously, the three-point percentages are low, but it's not like he's shooting a ton of volume from beyond the arc. And overall, for the price that you have to give up for him, I think it's really worth it. The next player on the list is another big man. It's Miles Turner with the Indiana Pacers. Turner's an intriguing player because this is somebody who can really stretch the floor. He can score from everywhere, but his three-point shooting is really a valuable asset. He's a phenomenal interior defender, one of the best post defenders in the game. Now, you're going to have to give up quite a bit for him, say a young player like Jeremy Sohan, along with a draft pick, but I think it could be worth it. There are probably worse young players who you can give up rather than Jeremy Sohan and still make this work. But I think for what you're getting out of Miles Turner, this could be a good deal. By the end of the 5-year simulation, he is starting to regress a little bit, but he is still really solid. The shooting numbers look good. The defense looks good. He shoots a solid level from 3, and especially early on in your franchise, I think he can be quite a good player for you down low. Starting at center, his numbers are going to go down, so you're going to get your most bang for your buck. Jonathan Kuminga with the Golden State Warriors is the next player on my list. At just 20 years old, the Cumbucket can score from all 3 levels. That includes as a three-point shooter. I don't think people realize how good of a shooter he is at his age. He's super athletic. He's a versatile defensive player as well. You're going to have to give up quite a bit for him. I gave up a package that includes Keldon Johnson and other stuff. But I think with the player that Jonathan Kuminga turns into in this game, it's really worth it. After the 5-year simulation, look at his attributes. They look phenomenal. His numbers have gone up really every year. And if you look at this last season with New Orleans, he averaged 20 a game on really good efficiency, 55% from the field and nearly 44% from 3. So I think this is a guy who really has the ability to get better, and his untapped potential is still very high. Jayden Hardy with the Mavericks is next on the list. He doesn't have many great skills, but he does specialize in one thing, and that's scoring the basketball. If you want someone who can be your microwave scorer, your sixth-man type, Jayden Hardy's your guy, and you really don't want to give up too much for him. Devontae Graham, Rock Chalk, Cedi Osman, and some second-round picks is all it's going to take to get the job done. Jayden Hardy's numbers in this game across the board look pretty solid. Again, he's not going to really give you anything defensively. He's a fine playmaker, but nothing overly special. But it's the scoring, particularly the three-point shooting, that should get you excited. He averaged at least 18 points per game in all 5 seasons of my simulation. Callan Anthony with the Orlando Magic is next up on the list. The Magic have a log jam of guards, and if you're doing a realistic franchise, Callan Anthony would be a really good target. He can score from all 3 levels. He's a good playmaker. Not great defensively, but his offense is really, really solid. You're not going to have to give up too much for him. In this trade, I made a package around Trey Jones. If you prefer Jones' style of play, maybe you don't want to make that trade, but if you're looking for someone who can score, Callan Anthony is your guy. During the 5-year simulation, he only played 3 of the seasons. I don't know why, but the one season where he got an opportunity, which was the first one, he was quite solid. He averaged 16 a game as a bench player with the Orlando Magic. The shooting percentages look pretty good, and then a couple years later, the shooting percentages look strong as well. So if you give him an opportunity, unlike 2K did here, I think he'll be pretty happy with your result. Alperen Şengün is the next player on the list. I was really surprised to see how easy it is to trade for him. Şengün is only 21 years old, and he is a blossoming star. The playmaking is certainly the most exciting thing about his game. He has a really good feel as a playmaker and a passer for someone so big and so young. He's a good rebounder. He can score from inside, improving jump shooter. Not great defensively, but he's only 21 years old, and all you really have to give up here is Miles Bridges. I feel like this is a complete fleece. I don't know why the Rockets would ever consider this, but sure, we would be glad to do it. During the 5-year simulation, Şengün has developed into a pretty good player. He's an 86 overall, and he's still only 26 years old. There's still a lot of room for him to improve. The numbers look really solid across the board. You're going to get someone who averages 16, 17 a game, double-digit rebounds. Obviously, the passing is the most exciting thing about his game, but he's not an awful defender, and he can stretch the floor a little bit, and I think he's going to be one of the best young centers in your league. Josh Christopher is a complete sleeper. He's only a 74 overall with the Memphis Grizzlies, but he's got an intriguing skill set. He can drive to the basket really well. He's super athletic, but I think the rest of his game needs a lot of polish. However, in NBA 2K24, he develops quite well, and I think being ahead on the curve and trading for him before he develops could be really smart. In this trade, we're not only getting Christopher, but we're also getting Jake LaRavia, who's only 21 years old, in exchange for Gordon Hayward and Jeff Green. I mean, that feels like a complete heist. During the simulation I did, Christopher's rating only went up to a 79. The attributes don't fly off the page necessarily, although he has certainly improved as a jump shooter. But if you look at his stats, I do think there is a lot to be excited about. He can average around 15 a game for you, and his efficiency, while a little bit inconsistent, he can shoot around 50% from the field. He's not a great three-point shooter. You'll notice that. But he's very good at slashing and cutting to the basket. I think he can be a good asset for you off the ball. Naz Reid is the next player on my list. He's an all-around big man who doesn't really have many major strengths, but he also doesn't really have any major weaknesses. He is only 6'9", but he's also around 260 pounds, and he's got a long wingspan at around 7'4". The price for him isn't really too bad. All I had to really trade here is Terry Rozier, and we got back Kyle Anderson as well. You can use Anderson if you want, or you can flip him later, which, spoiler alert, we'll be doing shortly. I think this is really good value considering Naz Reid is pretty young, and I think he's on a pretty team-friendly contract with Minnesota, and I guess now your team. During the simulation, Naz Reid ended up doing pretty solid. His rating remained unchanged for the most part, but he sims really well in this game, and so because of that, I think he can be a really good piece for your team. This is somebody who can average 16, 17 points a game depending on his role. The efficiency, I will say, is a little bit low, but I do feel like he takes too many threes, so if you knock down his three-point tendency a little bit, his efficiency will probably go up. Ochai Agbaji with the Utah Jazz is next. Am I biased for putting Ochai Agbaji on the list? Probably. Is Ochai a really good player to trade for? Absolutely. Agbaji is a phenomenal perimeter defender. He's a good three-point shooter, and he's a good athlete. At only 23 years old, I think there's plenty of room to get better with him, and all we have to give up is Kyle Anderson, who we got as a throw-in from the previous trade. So we essentially traded Terry Rozier and something else for both Naz Reid and Ochai Agbaji. Rock chalk. With Agbaji only being 23 years old, there is plenty of room for him to grow. You shouldn't expect him to turn into like an all-star or anything, but I think given the opportunity, he could be quite solid. Here, he's around an 80 overall. He's a knockdown three-point shooter. The numbers aren't going to flash off the page, but depending on the role you give him, he could do better than that. Look at his three-point percentages, though. This is what I'm excited about. Consistently right around 40% over those last few years, and he's a great perimeter defender as well. The final player on the list is Julius Randle, one of the better players we have on the list. Julius Randle is a guy who can give you all-star appearances. He can score from all three levels. He's a great playmaker at his size, and he's a versatile defender. I get that Knicks fans don't really like him in real life, largely because his efficiency at times can be a little bit of an issue, and he can be inconsistent. But with an A+ inside scoring, his efficiency is not going to be that bad, especially compared to where it sometimes feels like in real life. During the simulation I did, Randle really did not start to regress too badly, and the numbers across the board look really impressive. 23, 24 points per game, double-digit rebounds 1 year, good passing. The field goal percentages are better than what he's had in the past in real life, and the three-point shooting isn't too bad as well. So those are the 10 players who you should trade for in your NBA 2K24 MyNBA franchises. Let me know what you thought of these choices down below. And if there are other players who you really like to trade for, feel free to leave them down below as well. I hope everybody enjoyed. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Peace out.